word on this. There, that note helps. All right. Good evening, one and all. And this is the printer that we will be talking about this evening. His name is Robert Etienne. He lives in Paris. And you see the date when he was born and when he died. And he will eventually have to leave Paris very quickly because he gets in trouble for what he's publishing. He doesn't feel safe any longer. So what I'm going to do is all of the books that we're going to be looking at are in the rare book room of the Krauth Memorial Library. And what I thought we would do is just sort of look at how Etienne is setting up a page. What is important to note in this is that Etienne is not a theologian, okay? So he is simply a printer, but he is a very well-educated printer. At the dinner table, he spoke either Latin or Greek. So this is a family that took learning very seriously. And so Etienne is very gifted in the languages of Latin and Greek, and he will use them, and he's not a theologian. And so his work upsets theologians. Froben was publishing Erasmus of Rotterdam's materials, but Erasmus was the theologian, Froben was the printer. Cranach was publishing Luther's materials in Wittenberg, but Luther was the theologian and Cranach was his printer. Etienne is not a theologian, he's a printer. So the theologians get upset with him. They feel, how should I say, threatened. They feel threatened. So here is Robert Etienne. He is appointed the king's printer in 1539, which is a high position in France, Paris. He is a very well-noted, very learned individual, and he is promoted as the king's printer. Etienne had his printing house in Paris, and what printers would normally do is they would say, if you give me 10 copies of your books, I will put them in my store if you take 10 copies of what I've printed and put it in your store. So there was no such thing, let's say, as a bookstore. There was no Barnes and Noble, no Borders, no Amazon online. You walked to a print shop, and when you walked through the door, you were in the retail. It was the retail area. And the printer naturally had the materials that they had printed. But there was sort of this agreement in Paris that they would swap books, they would share books, so that when you went in, you saw a neighboring printer or a printer down the street or a printer in another part of town. They had this sort of cooperation. Etienne was more than glad to bring in books from other printers, but he never shared his books in other print shops. So he was very well aware of who he was. And so if you wanted a book printed by Etienne, and you will want a book printed by Etienne, you got to get to his print shop. So he has this air about himself. He has this sense of who he is and how important he is. So here we go. We're going to take a look. We're going to dive right in to the 1546 Latin Bible that he printed. And we're just going to look at pages, and we're going to watch what he's doing with the pages. So here's his title page. This is a title page, and this is quite common in the 16th century. You have at the top the announcement. This is the Bible. We'll get some words. And what you see in the center, this individual standing under this tree, that is Robert Etienne. And that is what we call the printer's device. So when you were looking at a book, you opened the book, you saw that, and you know, oh, that's an Etienne edition. So he made it very clear who he was. That was very important. You wanted to catch the eye of a potential customer. And so he puts this wonderful, wonderful, wonderful printer's device, that's his signature, on the book, on the title page. And this belonged to William Ashmead, who was one of the people who was very formative in the Lutheran Seminary in Philadelphia. So let's just take a look at what he does here. Let's parse out the title page, okay? So you have the word Biblia framed. So this is a common technique to frame words that you want to draw attention to. You put it in capital letters, bold, and then there's some artwork going on behind. So who do we have here? All right, you look in the upper, you see in the upper left-hand corner, you see a snake on a pole. That is Moses. That is when God punished the Israelites with serpents. He told Moses to put a bronze serpent on a pole, and if people looked at it, they would be healed. So over here on the left-hand side, you have Moses. On the right-hand corner, you have the cross. Jesus, you have Moses, and then you have Christ in the right-hand corner. So we're talking about the stories of Moses, and we're talking about the stories of Christ. You're getting people's attention. Then you have this vineyard. And so Etienne is saying the Bible is this vineyard, this wonderful vineyard. So it delights the visual moment in a possible customer. And you have the workers down there harvesting and bringing the fruits from this vineyard. They're harvesting they're down here at the lower end here. They're harvesting and bringing the fruits of their labor. So the idea is the Bible is a vineyard. It has rich fruit. And you go in and you will walk through these pages, this garden of delights, and you will reap rewards. So that's important to Etienne. And he wants to get that across. The Bible is a garden. So now let's look at the printer's device. Here you have it. Here is Etienne standing under an olive tree. We've grafted in some of the branches here. So we're working to improve this olive tree. We're going to improve its work, what it produces. We're trimming the olive tree, which is part of what you do. We trim off what isn't working. We graft in new branches. Very important. So what is he saying here? This is his printer's device, and he's quoting Romans 11:20. Noli autem sapiere sed time. Be not high-minded, but fear. So Etienne is publicly announcing his humility of saying, you know, I'm not high-minded. I'm not high-minded. I'm reverent. And so this is my motto. This is my motto. So he doesn't want to offend anybody. And there he is in classic garb, you know, in his olive garden underneath this sign of the Bible as a vineyard. Now, this particular edition, what I've done here is I have put light underneath a page, and I'm looking through the page, and what you see right here in white, this fine white material, this fine white line there, the little design there in the center, that's called the watermark. And this tells you who the paper maker was, who made this paper. And so then you can trace this because these were cataloged, and then you knew the quality of the paper. You did this, paper was created with a high degree of linen. So there were no such things as linen rags hanging around your house. There was no such things as linen rags going into the trash. They were harvested. They were sold to the printers. They put them in a tub with water. And what they will do is they're next to a creek. They will have a water mill, and that wheel, the water wheel, will be turning, and it turns a mechanism in the paper mill that basically lifts hammers. And they will go back in and out of this vat that is filled with these linen rags and water. And they will pound it. And it creates this wonderful solution. And we have a very sophisticated word for this. We call it slurry. We make a slurry. And this is linen returning back to its liquid form. And then what you do is you take a screen. You have a screen. And that screen is copper wires. And at every inch, you will have a thicker wire running you have the screen in the vertical, and then you will have every inch, you will have a thicker wire holding those vertical wires in place. And that will give you what we call chain lines. And those chain lines help us see what the format of the book is. If the paper maker has a reputation that they want to maintain, they will take extra copper wire in their screens and they will create a design. And what you do is you go into the slurry, you pull it up, and the water starts running out of this linen. And you will hold it there, and then you will wait for a while. You put it on a tray, and then you're going to, as much water goes out, and these chain wires will actually leave their indentation, their mark on the paper. So if you have a rare book, a book from the 16th century, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hold it up to the light to see the chain lines and see if I can find the watermark. because then I can identify the paper mill where the printer purchased his paper. So here we have this watermark, and these are great. These are great. Some of them are majestic. They're wonderful. This is fairly simple, but it's a great watermark. So here we are. So now we come to the preface, and we're not going to read the preface. He's going to talk to you, and he's going to say, I'm going to describe the inception of the edition. I'm going to explain my research, my debt to friends, because they're putting out money so that he can actually print this. So you always honor your friends in the preface, and then some directions to the reader. So this is important. This is an important moment for the author. If the potential customer is interested, Etienne is going to then honor that customer by saying, here's my idea. Here's how I carried out this idea. Here's my debt to the friends who advanced me some money so I could actually pay the paper mill so I wouldn't go to prison. And here's my directions to the reader. So this is his preface. He's talking to the reader. This is quite common. Okay, so now you see before you, this is a key page, and this is what sets Etienne and printers, it sets them apart. Okay, this is 16th century. What they are doing as a result of the Renaissance, if you ever want to read a fun book, well, I found it fun, The Bookseller of Florence by Russ, it talks about the ending of the manuscript era in Florence, and Cosimo and Lorenzo de' Medici and the Piccolomini and these thinkers and these artisans. And in the Renaissance era, people would make journeys when they had the means and the way to do it. They would make journeys to the monasteries looking for manuscripts. And they would talk to the abbot to get permission to get into the library, to get the librarian to be friendly to them, because we can sometimes be a surly lot. So you would get in there, and you would look through their manuscripts, and then you would sit down and you would either ask somebody to copy it for you, or you did the copying yourself. And what they did is they began to compare manuscripts. This is a fruit of the Renaissance. They looked at the manuscripts and they began to see variations in the text. In the text of Plato, Aristotle, the scriptures, the church fathers, they began to see variations. The variations sometimes occurred because of the copyist making a mistake. And we've all done the same thing. You're copying text and your eye comes back to the wrong place and you keep going. Okay, so you knew you were at the word instruction, and you come back and you see the word instruction, but it's a line further down and you don't realize it. You keep copying it. We make those mistakes sometimes when we're typing. We'll go back to the wrong place and we keep going. And sometimes the copyists weren't as diligent as they were supposed to be. So you ended up with texts that had these variations. Bruce Metzger, a New Testament scholar at Princeton Seminary for many years, actually wrote a book and basically cataloged all of the errors the copyists would make. Okay, so it's a lot of fun to just see them. We do the same thing. So they began to they did a comparison between manuscripts. And what Etienne is saying here, on the left-hand side, you have abbreviations. And he's telling you the manuscripts that he used when he prepared this edition of the Bible. I went here, I worked in this monastery, I have this example here, I have all of these. He's telling you the manuscripts he consulted in order to come up with his edition. This is critical. It's still done today. If you take New Testament Greek, you have to buy the Kurt Aland edition. We're up to, I think, 27. Mine's down there. And at the bottom of every page are all the manuscript variations for the scriptural texts. These agree here. This wording is in these texts, these manuscripts. This wording is here. Then you have to make up your mind which ones you're going to pick. And so this is Etienne is saying, here are the manuscripts I consulted. This was a high selling point, particularly to people who were interested in reading the scriptures, in getting back to the heart of the scriptures, that you were saying, here's what I consulted to give you this edition. All right. So here we are. And he's explaining in his Latin. He said, I'm looking at the Gospels, the Psalms. I'm looking at this text. For the Gospels, I used the German Areum for the Psalms, I went to Argentium. In St. Matthew, I went to Latum. These are the places where I went. These are the places. Argentum is, Argentina is Latin for silver, and it's the Latin name for the city of Strasbourg. That's right on the border between Offenburg and France, between Germany and France. So Strasbourg, huge, huge cathedral. So he goes there and he looks at that manuscript. And so he's telling you, reader, here's what I did and here's where I looked in order to get the text that I created for this edition. So here we have, and this is the Complutensium. This was a very, did I put it down here? No. The Polyglot. This was the entire Bible in 6 different languages. Okay, so this was the Complutensian Polyglot, and it was published in Spain. It was a huge success, People wanted to consult it, had Greek, Latin, and so this was a huge, huge success. And so if you had a copy of this particular volume of edition of the Bible, you were respected. So what I'm saying is, we live in an era today where, you know, I can go to the State Library of Bavaria in Munich and I can download all of these texts. They're available, they've been digitized, okay? And in the space of an hour, I can fill up my computer and take over, you know, about 15, 20 megabytes very easily, you know, and if you do 3 or 4 times, you've used up 100 megabytes within the space of a half an hour. That wasn't their world. So when they did this, when they went to these places, they were actually, it demonstrated their commitment to producing good research, to producing a good edition. They went to these places, they consulted these editions, they went to libraries that had these volumes. And so this is what the printer is doing. Normally, it would be Luther. Normally, it would be Erasmus. It would be somebody else. In Paris, it's Etienne, and he's a printer. All right. So here's a wonderful page. Here's a wonderful page where we're helping you understand the book of Genesis, the book of Genesis. So he's saying, here's an index of the testaments of Christ and the apostles and New Testament citations where a certain verse was used from Genesis. So he's giving you a little concordance. He's giving you also a little concordance so you can do this. Your Bible is becoming your Bible encyclopedia. It's offering you tools. It's offering you tools that help you do some research. So you're curious, you're excited. Here you are. Here are some places where you will find the book of Genesis quoted in the New Testament. So you're the only kid on the block that knows this piece of information. You can share that over coffee hour with your friends as you're doing this. This is highly revolutionary. When you think of it, this is a printer. He's putting this together and he's selling you a book. You take it home, you read, you make the decision. So you can see where theologians might become nervous because you've now put the court of approval, not in a meeting, you're not putting it in a meeting of a church meeting, a council, a church council. You're giving it to the reader, saying, you read, you make the decision. And so Etienne is basically building up the reader, is allowing the reader to read and make their own decisions. All right, now this is Etienne. This is Etienne 1546. This is Genesis 1, and this is beautiful. This is a great example of fine quality printing. You know, Creatio Mundi. So you have a running title at the top of each page, Creation of the World. And then Liber Genesis, you know, the book of Genesis, and its Hebrew is Bereshit. So, you know, you're being surrounded by Latin, you're being surrounded with its Hebrew name and then the actual Hebrew word. You have this wonderful printed illuminated initial, which this is optically organizing the material so you don't get lost. So when you see that, you know, oh, we're beginning a new book. When you get there, it's, oh yes, here it is. And it's a garden. Again, notice the flowers. It's a garden where you will harvest a bouquet of knowledge. So let's wander down this. Here's this wonderful printed, this is a wood block. They would have had a silversmith carve this. They had them in drawers. And so I need an eye, and they would go looking for an eye, and that's one we're going to use. And so that's it's pleasing to the eye. You know, in addition to text, you have these directors. You have these directors that tell you where you are. So here we are, creation of the world. Notice here, I'm rolling my cursor here. You see a little eye. This is actually called a director. If you were gifted artistically, you could get your pens and you could actually create your own illuminated initial around that little eye. So it's editor. And so this is an eye, this is the director. And this will run through all of the remaining sections, the sections of the book of Genesis. We're at chapter 2 now. So you can do that or you can leave it. If you're a humble, poor scholar, you'll just say, I'm happy with that. I'm happy with that. I'm delighted that I have this. So here we are, we're looking at Etienne organizing the information, optically organizing the information so the reader is not going to get lost. There is space between the words. There is space between sentences. Pardon me. So it's really well designed, clean. Now, bottom of the page, you're looking for this. This is Noah's Ark. This is how they envisioned Noah's Ark at that time. And it's sort of a box. It's not the way we see an ark. They see it as a box. And you have the floodwaters. And it was important to give you that illustration. These illustrations were created by Nicholas of Lyra. And they were very popular in the 15th century and into the 16th. If you were to have a good edition, you have Nicholas of Lyra diagrams. They're not really pictures, they're diagrams. All right, so let's wander along. Now, oh, there it is. There's the Ark of Noah. There it is in all its glory. And you see all the people drowning around there, all around in the drowning of this. So this is a very, 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 very poignant description, poignant illustration of Noah's Ark. All of these letters here, they will be described in the key at the bottom of the illustration. So this is a Nicholas of Lyra diagram, shows you Noah's Ark. All right, so now, let's go back here for a second. Let me go back here. That's not the best place. Let's go, I'll see if I can do this. There are no verse numbers yet, but Etienne is going to use verse numbers. He's the one who creates verse numbers. What they did, and this came out of the Dominican tradition. If you look, let's say this is chapter 16. Here's an eye. It's going to tell you that this is you want to make it illuminated, have fun with it, fine. Notice here, it's a little difficult to see. This is an A. There's an A. Here is a B. Here is a C. Here is a D. Watch that for a while and see what happens. They created sections. So here I have my A, here I have my B. So when I wanted to give you a reference, I would say here, Genesis chapter 16, A. And you knew what they were referring to was in this section of the page. If it was in this section, you would say Genesis chapter 16, B. And so they created these sectors in each chapter. This was a Dominican tradition and it caught on. And so people would use this for almost 3 centuries, where you had references, Genesis 16a. And you'll see this, it's going to keep reappearing. And then we have these notes. He's giving you notes in the margins, and he's explaining the manuscripts where he consulted. These are the manuscripts that he's consulted and the variation in the reading. So he's saying to the reader, they're not all uniform. You need to know this, and then you make up your mind. All right. So here we have a verse, and it's talking about Egypt, Agar and Egypt. And he's saying, well, there's this word here. Here's the word. This is the word here. So here's the word acquiseret. And he says, he puts a little quote there, and that directs you over here. And he says, well, in this manuscript, it's not acquiseret, it's acquinescet. So it says, okay, there's a variation. This is the 1546. Luther is just about ready to die. He dies on February 18, 1546. So, you know, the Reformation is underway. Luther editions have been printed. People are talking about Luther's writings. People are talking about Erasmus of Rotterdam. He's dead. He died 1535, 36, 37, or 1536, 1530. He died 1536. Luther dies 1546. So their editions of the Bible are selling like hotcakes. And here's Etienne taking and saying, okay, here's a nice edition. This is a nice edition. It's a folio. It's a lovely book. Paper, wonderful. Still as white as the day it came off the printing press. That linen will hold up for another 500 years. We won't be around, but this will be. It does not react to the elements in. It does not react to the elements like newspaper will. Newspaper has a high quality of wood pulp, and the bleach is still in there, but it doesn't. The bleach does not harm the linen, but it does work with against wood pulp. So if you have the July 1969 Inquirer that says "Man lands on moon," I will tell you the color of the page, and I will tell you that if you touch it, there'll be little crumbs all over the floor because it's getting harder and more brittle as the bleach is in there. Because it's mostly wood pulp, whereas this is mostly linen. So here we have this. Boom. Here we are, Genesis chapter 37. This is the story of Joseph, where his brothers are jealous of him and they throw him in a cistern and they're about ready to murder him. Then one brother sees a caravan and decides, oh, why don't we get something out of this? We'll sell him into slavery. And, you know, and we'll tell dad he was killed and we'll get rid of him. We'll take care of this. But God had something else in mind for that. So here you see the director is the H. Then I have my A, my B, and I have my notes. He's giving you little notes here on the side. Here he's telling you about a variation. He's telling you about a variation in the text, and he's citing the manuscript. So he's saying, reader, I trust you. I want you to have this information at your fingertips. This is exciting in 1546 in Paris. This is the Ark. This is yes. This is the curtain. This is the curtain in the tabernacle that will cover the Ark. And this again was a Nicholas of Lyra diagram that was transferred into the print era. We have an edition of the Luther Old Testament 1523. And he included these diagrams, and the owner had them decorated. He took it to a rubricator, an artist, and they filled in the colors, and it's beautiful. It has gold leaf and silver. It's just really exciting to see. So here it is. He's giving you the Nicholas of Lyra diagrams. Here's the Exodus. We're at Exodus, 26. And here we have, again, page number, text clean. You don't get lost here. You don't get lost in his editions of the Bible. There's a space between each letter. It's not cramped. It's breathing. All right, here are more Nicholas of Lyra diagrams. There's the Ark of the Covenant. There's the fountain where the priests will wash their hands. These were important diagrams that they felt to include for their readers to actually, for your potential customer. We give you everything. There you are. And he made note, he honored this person was a well-known, Vapabilis was a very well-known woodcut maker in Paris, and so he's crediting this. It's another incentive for you to buy this. You can put this on your coffee table. You can show your neighbors and your friends. They will be astonished. They will be astonished at what you have. So and there it is. There's where he's at the beginning of the book, the title page. He's acknowledging right on the title page, all of the illustrations you see, come from Francisco Vatablo. And so he's a merchant. He knows how to catch your eye and your attention to give you a quality volume. So here we are, there it is, right there. So you look at this, you see the vineyard, you see the harvesters, you see Moses, you see Christ in symbols, and then he starts to explain right on the title page what you're going to see and who contributed to this edition, and that's where he put this particular artist who created the woodcuts. That's good that is good. You know, he's merchandising this. He's got some good savvy sales skills going on. Here are the tribes of Israel, where they were located around the tabernacle, and it's hard to see, but on each tent is the name of the tribe. So you have that where they were located as they were assembled around the tabernacle. This is a candelabra. This is the candelabra in this temple, and it's described at great lengths in the book of Leviticus, in the Pentateuch. It's described at great lengths in the book of Exodus. I'm sorry, in the book of Exodus, how it's to be constructed, and so then they create a visual diagram, a woodcut of that particular item that was used in the tabernacle. Okay, so now we're up to, this is the gospel according to Luke. Nice clear page, all is organized. Everything is here. Here you have F as your director. I'm down here to B, so this is automatically assumed to be A. Here is B. So if I had a verse from chapter 2 in Luke, where I would be talking about, and in the days of Caesar Augustus, a decree went out that all the world should be taxed. If you wanted to cite that, you need to go to Luke chapter 2a. And that you knew that this is the section where you will be reading. All right, so let's stop share. Let's look at another edition of the Bible. All righty. All right, let's look at the Greek. We'll do some Greek for a moment. This is his 1550. This is the 1550 edition of his Greek Bible. This is what will send him packing. He needs to leave Paris because he's afraid. He is afraid he will be put in prison. So let's see if I can get this to move where it needs to. There we are. That's there. this is the Royal Edition. And Erasmus published his first bilingual Latin Greek edition in 1516. So this is 34 years later, and we've come a long way. All right, this is his title page. And he's telling you this is the Greek Bible. We have the Gospels and then the book of Acts. And then we will also have Paul's epistles. So we have the New Testament. He's changed his printer's design, but this will catch the eye of any potential buyer. Here we have this wonderful thing. My predecessor stamped the title page of every book for identification purposes. We don't do that anymore, but it's nice they did it. And you see down here, Lutetia. Lutetia is Paris's Latin name. And if you were a Latin settlement, you used your Latin name, so it gave you more dignity. Lungdini is Lyon. Strasbourg was Argentina. Paris is Lutetia. So you would always use your Latin name to sort of give you that air of superiority, that air of refinement, that air of history. We go back to the Romans. So, and this is for out of the Bible of the monarch. So he has the monarch's permission to do this, and it's 1550. And in his colophon, he spells this all out. I've printed this in 1550. I did it on the 17th day. Which month he's talking about leaves me to wonder. I have to work on that because the numbering doesn't work. It's 46. So not sure what he's talking about there. I'll have to figure that one out someday. But here's his colophon. This is the end of the book, and he's citing some of his sources that he's using. So at that time, this was the most renowned edition of the Greek New Testament. Okay, 1550. Now he's using his printer's device one more time. He's refined it a little bit, but we still have that, be not high-minded, but reverent. We have the olive tree with branches being brought down and grafting new branches in to bear fruit. So he's making that clear. Here he is talking, here he is talking to the reader, to the beloved reader in Greek. So, I'm talking to you in Greek. This is for a learned audience. And as I said, this is the language they would speak in addition to Latin at the dinner table. This family was, this family was very well educated. This family was very well educated, and they loved it. So here's Robert Etienne. He's using his Latin version of the name Stephanos, and he's talking to the blessed reader, and he's explaining what he did. So here we have, this is the Greek. This is what Greek looks like in 1550. So what is it? Well, if you look in your computer, you have a font called Garamond. This is the person who created that font. Some of these fonts still bear the names of their creators. He was the silversmith that created Garamond. And Etienne commissioned him to create this font that he would use in his Greek edition. And so Garamond is still available in your Word, and this is where it comes from. And so Garamond was a well-respected artist, silversmith in France. He creates the form. He creates the form from which you will then pour in lead and tin to create the movable type. So he is the one who designs this. He sits there painstakingly doing these letters. This is not easy, because you have to get these diacritical marks in your text. So you have that he has to, when you cast that movable print, they have to fit perfectly. They have to fit perfectly. And that's what made this such a this is what made it so visually exciting, to see everything so neatly organized, to have this, to know that somebody took the time, the trouble to create the molds. Then you created the little pieces of movable type. Then you put it together, you print this, and it's in Greek, and it's an exquisite looking script. So here we are, Claude Garamond. Now, once we finish our Greek preface, we're going to talk to the reader in Latin. Just in case your Greek is not up to snuff yet, I want to talk to you in Latin, because everybody who was educated in Latin. You didn't go to school to learn French. You didn't go to school to learn German. You went to school to learn Latin. German you spoke in the marketplace, in the kitchen, at home. In school you spoke Latin. So you figured if your Greek isn't up to snuff, I'll talk to you in Latin, re-explain everything. Beautiful. Here we are, Robert Stephanos Etienne, talking to you, to the Christian reader, Christiane Lector, in the name of God and our Lord Jesus Christ, his testament. And so we have this wonderful text that he's getting out there. He knows what he's doing. Here we are talking further, giving you more prefaces, honoring the people who donated the money that would help and pay the paper mill to make this happen. Here we are. And now we come to the gospel according to Matthew. This is fantastic. This is fantastic. This is a paratext. This alerts you, this elaborate woodcut is put there to alert the reader. Something's happening now. You're getting into something's changing. This is no longer preface. This is no longer explanations. This is the text. And this is the gospel according to Matthew. And how we have this wonderful initial there. Nope, yep, there it is. And we have this wonderful initial, the B that's printed, it's a woodcut, and then we have the text. And then we're going to give you the references. A is the director. It's Matthew 1a, you knew you were in this area of the text, okay? All right, there it is. This is printing, exquisite printing in 1550. This is 100 years after the printing press has come to be, and here you can see the quality of work that they're producing. Here's this is Paul. This is the book of Romans, headed off, this is by Paul. So Paul, an apostle of Jesus Christ. And here we have the A is assumed here, but you see the B is the director. And then we have some references we are going to give you some references. Did I do it? Yep. So this reference here, he's citing Psalms 18a. So you knew that if you went back to the Psalms, you would find in chapter 18a, that was the biblical reference that was being referred to here. So here we have this lovely lovely woodcut up here at the top. Looks good. This is Etienne, and he will take off, and he has to leave Paris. He has to leave Paris after he prints this, because he's afraid for his life. And here we have a codex, the Codex Betsa, which put him in the forefront of a Greek edition, because this was a newly formed codex source that was very hard. He found it. And so he's telling you that when I say this, B, that means Codex Betsa, which was a text that came out of the Mediterranean arena And he says, I had this, and I am incorporating that text into my text of the New Testament. And the prison has 7 steps, is what it says here. And he gets it from this codex. So he's doing research. Then he's taking what he's finding in his research. He's printing it. All right. So let's do one more. And then all of this will come together in a very neat way, I hope. All right. New share. And now we're going to see something that's in English. That should be a relief. It's in English. All right. Now let's see, slideshow from beginning. I'm going to bring you to the 1560 Geneva Bible. It was printed in Geneva. Mary Tudor died in 1557. Because Elizabeth 58, because Elizabeth comes to the throne in 1558, because Elizabeth I comes to the throne in 1558. When Mary Tudor came to the throne, about 500 leaders of Protestant Reformation in England left for continental Europe. They lived in Geneva, they lived in Basel, they lived in Frankfurt because they feared for their life. Mary Tudor was known as Bloody Mary because she put many of the Protestant leadership to death. So when Elizabeth comes to the throne in 1558, many begin to return. The English leaders of the Reformation stayed in Geneva to finish this edition of the Bible, the Geneva edition. And a great deal of the work that is in this edition comes from Etienne, all right? This is the favorite edition of the Pilgrims. This is the Bible they brought with them to Massachusetts. So John Calvin and his Theodore Betze, that was the Betze Codex. He had it, he gave it to Etienne so he could use it. He had brought it with him. These are the two people that are very formative of this English Geneva Bible. Calvin is in Geneva, and so they are turning to Geneva, they're turning to Calvin for their directions. Now, you recognize this. You would recognize this. This would be very easy for you to read. And this is all Etienne, what you saw in the 1546 Latin Bible, what you see in the 1550. This is what is now being translated, taken over. This is going to be taken over into the English Geneva. So what you're looking at here is this is the French Geneva. The Geneva Bible was published in French, it was published in English, and it was published in Italian. Did Geneva have a large Italian Protestant community? No. Did they have a large French Protestant community? Yes. Did they have a large English Protestant community? No. But Geneva was publishing these Bibles to be exported. So this is the French edition. And it starts to look very familiar. You have the name at the top of the page. You have the name at the top of the page. You have a chapter summary. You have, for the first time, verse numbers. So let's see, let's look at this a little closer. We'll get there. We'll get there. I trust you. I've enlarged some of these. You have verse numbers. So we now have, but you also still have B, C, D. You still kept the old descriptors. You kept them because you didn't want a person to get lost. If they didn't have that, if you just gave them verse numbers, they wouldn't know how to if they had an older edition of the Bible, they wouldn't know where to look. So you still kept, you did both, you gave references with verse numbers and with section letters. So what you're doing is you're creating the Bible. Each page of the Bible has longitude and has latitude. Okay, so you know the coordinates, so nobody gets lost. So for now, you can finally say John 3:16, and everybody will turn to the right page. Luther died, never saw verse numbers. That comes after him. This is 1551 is when they were introduced by Etienne, and they took off immediately. So here he is. This is his 1553 French Bible. Looks just like every other edition of the Bible he's printed. There's its title, there's his wonderful printer's device, and there he is, Robert Etienne with his printer's device. So here we have it. And he takes everything he's done in the Latin edition and he applies it to the French Geneva Bible. So let's look. This is the Nicholas of Lyra diagrams for the vestments of the high priest. On the left, Nicholas of Lyra, 1502. We have that in the Krauth Library. And this is the 1553. They like these diagrams. They gave you sort of a graphic presentation of what was described in the book of Exodus. Okay, we have this wonderful letter, this opening initial. Etienne keeps this up. He likes this. It helps the reader find their place. All right. This is the chapter 37. We give you a picture. This is the Coverdale Bible. We're putting Joseph down the cistern. So this is an English Bible, an early English Bible that he's being put down into the cistern. So this is what the Coverdale Bible looks like. This is one of the early editions of a Bible in English. Coverdale did not have the permission of the king, but he was crossing his fingers that he would. Okay, so this is the title page for the Coverdale edition of the Bible. And let's see, there it is. So you have Etienne here, 1553, flowers. Over here we have the Dance of Death. So all of our woodcut initials are the Dance of Death. So, you know, a little different there, a little different take in what you're presenting. So we want to give you the fear of God, and the fear of God is the Dance of Death. Whereas Etienne is like, let's look at flowers. Let's look at flowers. So here you have Coverdale 1537, you have Etienne 1553, the Dance of Death, and on the other side we have wonderful flowers. All right, here's the 1560 English Geneva Bible. I have verse numbers, I have references, cross references with verse numbers, chapter summary, printed marginal notes, running chapter titles up at the top of each page, the name of the book. This is Etienne. All of this work came as a result of Etienne. If you opened your Bible, you would see a similar format. All the material is optically organized in such a way that the reader will not get lost. And Etienne is the one who gave us the verse numbers, and it takes up, you're leaving a lot of space. You're leaving a lot of white space at the end of each sentence there. So you're leaving a lot of white space, and that's expensive for the printer, but he wanted you to have these verse numbers and what comes with it. There's white space here. We separate the chapters with white space. So it's not crowded. This is what made the Geneva Bible so popular, is that you got it was a biblical commentary. You got the entire argument of the book before you started reading the book itself. That was part of the wish of Etienne and the printers in Geneva, was to give you. Because what they were trying to do is they were printing Bibles in English, French, and Italian to get them into the countries where Protestantism was not very popular, and pastors might not be there, but you yourself could read it, the Bible, and then benefit from the theology of Betza and John Calvin. So you, the reader, were doing this. So here we have there's the page, and then we have here's the vestments of the high priest. It's still included. All right, here's a map. This is Genesis 3. They're trying to figure out where Eden is located. So they're curious. They're curious where it's located, and they're trying to figure out from reading the book of Genesis where this might be located. But you can imagine pilgrims sitting in their log cabin, Plymouth Rock, up in Massachusetts, no pastor, and yet they will read this continually, and they have the full commentary. They have maps. It's sort of like a Bible commentary, Bible encyclopedia, and Bible itself. So we have these wonderful footnotes that are on the side. So there's the title page. It's the parting of the Red Sea is on the title page. This will be used 3 times in this edition. And it's a frightening picture because the Egyptians are on their way and the sea hasn't parted yet. And so it's sort of like saying, okay, be ready, fear ye not, be still and behold, because the miracle is about to happen, that God will part the Red Sea, and the Israelites will pass through, and the Egyptians will drown. So this is what the English Geneva is trying to get across. So here you are. The person, Roland Hall, is the printer. He didn't use a printing device. Rather, he decided to put this printed up, this of the parting of the Red Sea, on the title page to sort of remind you, be just, be holy, and then the sea will part. So here we have it. That's what he could have done, but instead he did that. And so he was sort of making his point. This is the word of God. This is serious. Take it seriously. This is Tyndale. This was the 1534. Tyndale is burned at the stake. He is captured in Antwerp. He is then executed for having printed the Bible in English, and he is burned at the stake. This is his 1534 edition of the English Bible. And this was published in an octavo. It's about the size of a paperback book, a small paperback book. And authorities hated octavos because they were portable, economical, and they could be hid very easily. So these are what English Bibles will start to look like. And we love these illustrations. We love to carry in illustrations. Here's the parting of the Red Sea in Tyndale and then in Coverdale, the parting of the Red Sea. They like to give you some visual images as well. But all of this comes as a result of Etienne. Etienne is the one who starts to optically organize the page in such a way that there's space between the words, between the chapters. And then when he creates verse numbers, all of this takes up far more room, but it optically organizes the material. When we open our Bible and we look at that text, it is Etienne's handiwork. And his most famous creation was the verse numbers, actually creating verse numbers. So let me stop there, and we'll see if there are any questions or if I've lost you. Hi there, TJ.
Hello, how's everyone?
Good, good. How are you?
Good.
So it's 7:54. I've walked you through all of these editions of the Bible. It's late at night. And here it is. You saw a Latin edition of the Bible, Greek edition of the Bible, and then some English editions of the Bible. But they're all the result of the work of Robert. Yeah. And he fled in 1550 to Geneva, and that's where he remained until he died. And his work, he ended up in the right place at the right time, because this was a city where Calvin was going to say, we're going to print these Bibles, we're going to translate them, we're going to export them, and they would help communities that had no pastors read the Bible, read the Word of God, hear some commentary, hear the argument. They're not going to get lost, and then they can make up their own minds. And someday,
Pastor,
sure.
Pastor, on a few of the pages, I noticed some underlining and some that I wasn't going to assume by any means that you had, but was that the work of someone who owned?
Yes.
As a private book, and just as we would underline or it's very interesting.
This is in the 1560. They had it rebound at the beginning of the 20th century, and they sanitized it. So they took basically to make it look a little cleaner. They actually sheared off some of the white space to get rid of some of the notes. We wouldn't do that today. We wouldn't do that today. And yes, these readers would often underline and leave notes in the margins. The particular copy that's in the Krauth Memorial Library, this particular copy has a note at Genesis 37 where he was saying, non est sapientia, it is not wise to go against the counsel of God. And then he writes the Spaniards, 1587. What he's talking about is the Spanish Armada. So he lived through the Spanish Armada, and he's taking Genesis 37 and he reads Genesis 37 as the attempt of the Spanish Armada to overthrow Protestant England. You know, as his brothers tried to throw Joseph in the cistern to get rid of Joseph. God had other plans. Joseph survived. Joseph becomes Pharaoh's prime minister, you know, and rises in power and in glory. So he's reading Genesis 37, and he says the Spaniards, is it not wise to go against the orders of God? And he puts Spaniards 1587 in his English script. And so what he's saying is the Spaniards came to destroy us like the brothers tried to destroy Joseph. They lost, just as Joseph's brothers lost, basically. In the end, Joseph becomes the hero of the story, just as England becomes the hero of the story for the defeat of the Spanish Armada.
Yeah.
So it's sad that we don't know who they took out pieces. They took out the pieces. Now, in Mary Muhlenberg's devotional, she wrote in it, and I was able to then translate her sketchy German and scratchy writing and wrote a paper. It was published about her marginal notes because she's allowing us to see her piety in her devotional.
Interesting.
So we know about Henry Muhlenberg, but this is the first time we've ever heard from Mary, his wife. So these marginal notes are very important. And that's what I sort of specialize in, the marginal notes that are in the rare books, in the rare book room. Right now I'm working on a book that was left by Eric Bjork. He's one of the Swedish pastors that was sent to New Sweden. He comes in 1697. He's here till 1714. His book stays here. He goes back home, and there's a marginal notes in a particular this theological book talking about the institution of Sunday. In Lutheranism, Sunday is not the Sabbath. The Sabbath is still Saturday. Remember, we talked about that in Bible study last weekend. It gets a few people weren't too happy with the idea. We do not have the authority to move Sabbath from Saturday to Sunday. Sunday is not the Sabbath. Lutherans position, right? And so they were talking about, and the reason it's important is that one of the Swedish pastors became a Sabbatarian, which is sort of like we worship on Saturdays. We will be vegetarians. It's sort of like a precursor of Seventh-day Adventist teaching. And so he was pushing that we need to worship on Saturday. And Bjork is arguing against him. So this is about 1704 when this takes off. So yeah, the marginal notes tell you a lot. They give you the thoughts of the people, what they were thinking as they were reading.
Were they ever just doodles?
Yes, yes. And Muhlenberg's boys Henry particularly was great for doodling. He did his math homework on the free end papers at the beginning and the end of the book. We have it. It's a book in Latin, and I guess he wasn't too thrilled with that, so he would doodle, and he would do some math. He was more interested in math than Latin. So yes, a lot of doodling. Yes, doodling. Yes. Very popular, very popular. So there's how printers handed us the legacy of the scriptures and how they were thinking, and what they were doing was innovative. There was no guidebook, and they were being innovative. And when Etienne comes up with verse numbers, it's this moment of, ding, eureka. And yet we take it for granted. And yet it didn't come about until 1551 when he started doing it in the New Testament, and then it took off. And it's like, And he's trying to optically organize the text so that readers of the Bible won't get lost. And he's giving it longitude and latitude. So if I say John 3:16, everybody knows where to turn. Very easy. And so these were innovative people. And they were, as I said, they're pioneers. And it's a lot of fun to see the evolution of the pages. And as I said, someday, next fall, we'll take a field trip on a Saturday morning, and we'll go to the rare book room, and I will pull out all of these editions of the Bibles and more. And you can see them, you can touch them. They're very, very lonely books. They're very lonely books. They love company. They love company. You can see them, you can touch them, turn pages. You just wash your hands beforehand. We're fine. You're good. They're sturdy. So we will do that. And I'll lay them out on tables, and we'll look at them, and you'll see what I dealt with for 14 years of my life and loved it.
Very good.
All right, everybody.
All right.
Just
one sharing.
Sure, I'm here.
I'm intrigued by some of the editions of the Bible that you have shown us. Are there any